בשם השם נעשה ונצליח, שיעור תורה, ברוכים הבאים, שבוע טוב, שבוע מבורך. We're back here to start off a new week with our Jewish HaShkafa, the Jewish ideology series based on the extraordinary sefer by the Chazon Ish, alav hashalom, called Emunah veBitachon. Tonight's shiur will be for Refuah Shlema for Rabbanit Levana Bat Sarah, Rabbanit Sarah Bat Anat, Rav Ephraim Ben Shulamit, Orit Bat Ilana, Talia Bat Sarah, Yitro Ben Avraham, David Ben Esriya, Doris Bat Jorah, Alex Ben Noach, and also for a Atzlacha Rabba for Yitro Ben Avraham, Oshri Ben Doris, Gabi Ben Doris, Elad Ben Doris, David Ben Esriya, Joshua Ben Noach, and a Zivug Agun for Netanel, Yosef Ben Noach, and Atzlacha Rabba for Marsha Bat Julie, Aida Bat Marsha, Samuel Ben Marsha, Cephas Ben Marsha, Alexander Ben Marsha, Shaul Ben Farzane, and also for Amir Ben Shaheen Hester. הקדוש ברוך הוא יברך אותם בכל מכל כל, חיים ארוכים, שלמים, מלאים תורה, מצוות, גמילות חסדים, רפואה שלמה, רפואת הנפש, רפואת הגוף, to them and to all of the wonderful people that continue to contribute their time, their money, their resources to help us continue spreading the truth around the world and to also help as many people as possible, both in the nefesh and the guf, both in the soul and the body, spiritually and physically. So, Baruch Hashem, we have a lot going on. There's a lot of material tonight, BeEzrat Hashem. Just a reminder constantly to everyone to download the app, the BeEzrat Hashem app, BeEzrat HASHEM, on the App Store, both on iPhone and Android, to watch the lectures. We're working very hard to make sure that the live feature on the app will come out, BeEzrat Hashem, very soon. So we're looking forward to making that major change. So for anyone that hasn't downloaded the app on the recently, please do. It's a good place to watch the lectures without any distractions or any yetzara, no advertising, no nothing. So Baruch Hashem, that's coming out very soon. Aside from that, also a reminder for anyone that wants to do KIRUV in their organization, in their community around the United States, wants to get some of these cards. If you want to pay for them, you're more than welcome to. If you don't have the money to pay for them, or you simply don't want to pay for them, just shoot us a message or a text message on WhatsApp, and we'll send you a few hundred of them to share in your community. A few very smart people in different locations are sending me the pictures of them doing, giving out the flyers, or even doing a movie screening. A group of guys that, Baruch Hashem, have helped quite a few people, themselves included, in Toronto, Canada, just did a movie screening that, Baruch Hashem, went very well.
Because the Gemara already knew things that we only discovered in recent generations. The flood, what did the flood do? The flood destroyed the entire world. The flood destroyed...
A second. 2, 3.
As I told you guys a few weeks ago, we have a couple of projectors that we're willing to lend out to anybody that wants to do a movie screening in their community of the Tikkun HaBrit movie or the HaShem Took Back His Millions movie, or both. We'll send you a projector with a USB attached to it, and all you'll need to do is simply just bring the people, maybe perhaps get some popcorn so people could, or pizza, kosher pizza or something like that, to get some people to watch the movies and get inspired and do tshuva. just like we're trying to do, Baruch Hashem. But I think that, again, giving out the flyers is a fantastic way to introduce people to our work, because it gives anybody that watches it a lot of chizuk. So we're getting a lot of new people that have been, watching these movies, especially the Tikkun HaBrit movie recently, because of the campaigns that we have. Advertising it, we're spending thousands of dollars every single day to try to get this message out to the four corners of the world in different languages. We have long crossed 2.5, maybe even 3 million views on the that particular movie. I think it's around 3 million views at this point between the English, Portuguese, Spanish, and German, French, Turkish, Indonesian, I believe, Hebrew, 10 different languages, also Russian. So 10 different languages you can get this movie. And BeEzrat Hashem, we're looking to reach out to a lot of people. And Baruch Hashem, a lot of new people came from, especially in the last couple of weeks, from the Russian, the Spanish, and the Portuguese channels are having the biggest effect in the last week or two. Before that, we also saw the Hebrew channel take off. So Baruch Hashem, a lot of people are watching this movie thanks to your contributions. So please do continue contributing, because your money is being well spent. Also, you'll see a clip coming out probably in the next day or two with a special message about some of the chesed that the organization does that we really don't have the time to have campaigns for. Because I know a lot of people ask me about, if we could help other things aside from KIRUV. Can we help this? Can we help that? And we always talk about different projects that we do at the organization to help special cases. And just this last few days, unfortunately, there's been a lot of poverty, in this last year. But in the last few days, we've had the merit to help a few more people. And one of those particular cases, the messenger that we sent, the team member that we sent to really go analyze the case and see where it at, just started crying once she saw what was going on over there. And the woman simply didn't have the money, so they ended up, taking second-hand mattresses, and these mattresses are practically from metal. The only thing I could compare it to is maybe what they used in the Holocaust, Hashem Yishmo, and it created a lot of major problems for the bodies of the people, and truly a nightmare. So Baruch Hashem, we had the merit to, as soon as we found out and we confirmed that this is the case, we got them new mattresses, and these types of stories are coming, on a regular basis. So for people that want to help, you don't have to wait for the holidays to contribute. You don't have to wait for me to tell you in a lecture that something is happening, because usually by the time I tell you, it's already happening. There's a lot of good things that we can do. We just simply need the ability to do it, and Baruch Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is helping us help you and everybody else. So for anyone that wants to join us is more than welcome to contribute in any way that they can. Now, as far as the this particular shiur, it's going to be a very important shiur for everybody out there that doesn't really truly understand the significance of what Dat Torah is, what is the, which literally translates to the knowledge of the Torah. Meaning, what is the knowledge of the Torah about specific things, especially in this last year. There's been a lot of confusion. I think there's been more people becoming sick from their confusion about what Torah is in the last year than Corona. Because Corona, got a lot of people sick and unfortunately killed a lot of people. It was the tool that Hashem used to take people out of this world, other than, instead of other tools that he uses usually. But nonetheless, this, unlike many other things, caused a massive amount of confusion to go out into the Jewish world, around the world, non-Jewish world as well, where people simply rejected what the big rabbis were saying on both ends. There was, as many people ask me, what do I think about the vaccine? And I've told you guys time and time again that if you are going to follow what the sages of this generation are saying, you have the protection of the Torah. Now then you're going to say to me, yeah, but the sages, the Gedolei Hador, are on both sides. You have big rabbis, big giants that are saying to take the vaccine, and you have big rabbis saying don't take the vaccine. And of course, there's a lot of little rabbis that are saying don't take it because it's going to kill you and you're going to die and so on and so forth. Now, so who do you listen to? Little rabbis, ignore. All the little rabbis, you ignore them. All the conspiracy stuff, you ignore it. You simply have to listen to Da'at Torah. Why? Because if you listen to Da'at Torah, you have the protection of the Torah. Yeah, but which one do you listen to? Whichever one you want. Whichever one you want. If you want to listen to the giants, tzaddikim, that say take the vaccine, you will get protected because of what they're saying. You're not going to be protected because the vaccine is so great. You'll be protected because you're listening to the Chachamim. If you don't want to take the vaccine, don't take it, no problem. And you're doing it because the Chachamim said don't take it, not because you decide not to take it. Okay, if you listen to them and they said don't take it, go ahead. You can listen to them and you'll be protected because they said it. But if you're simply going to take it because you want to take it anyway, and you're in essence going to use the Chachamim as the excuse of why you're taking it, and then force that opinion on a bunch of people, say, oh, you guys are not taking it, you're dangerous to society, and so on and so forth, you're not doing anything good to society, you're not doing anything good to yourself, and you won't have the protection of the Torah. Doesn't necessarily mean you'll get sick, it just means that you won't have the protection of the Torah. You're not. Same thing on the other end. If you're not taking it because you don't feel like taking it because you believe the conspiracy, or you simply don't like to take the vaccines, you hate them, and so on and so forth, and that's just because of you, not because the Chachamim said it. Also, again, you will not get the protection of the Torah. I've said this several times, and that stands the same. If people that are in the conspiracy world that like to believe that there's a few people that are trying to kill everyone, as if those people have power beyond God. Aside from it being heretical to think that anything is outside of the control of HaShem, many people will try to pinpoint different things they learned either on their own or from somebody that say, no, this is what it says in the Torah. It says in the Torah that you shouldn't take it because it's going to kill you, because there's a Zohar that says that you're going to have some major disease and everyone's going to die. All types of mumbo jumbo that people like to throw the Torah into. Again, if you want to take it based on what the Chachamim said, you can. If you don't want to take it based on what the Chachamim said, you don't have to. And you can listen to them, and there's no problem with it. The problem with people is that people simply don't want to listen to the Chachamim. They want to listen to their own opinions. They want to pretty much spam everyone they possibly know and don't know with whatever opinion they actually already have, their own predisposition, and in essence become like somewhat of a cult, or perhaps even a new movement of some kind, projecting their opinion in whichever way it is. This is not the right way of doing things. That the worst part about it is that many people will start pinpointing different things from the Torah that agree with their predisposition. And there's nothing further from the truth. There's nothing further from the truth than something like that. Now, the key is to understand is that if you're going to use Da'at Torah, you're going to use the opinion of the Torah, the knowledge of the Torah, the knowledge of the Chachamim, you have to know what it is. You have to know what it is. You have to know where you stand with things, because this apparently is a very common cold, perhaps even a much worse than Corona could be. It's a spiritual cold. It's a spiritual disease that we see in the world today, both in the Frum world and the Baal Tshuva world, where you have simply people discounting the opinion of the giants and simply challenging them with their own opinions, as if they're on the same playing field. And this is one of the things that the Chazon Ish has been trying to break down for us over these last several weeks when he's talking about the law. He's trying to tell us the significance of the law. Now the question is, what if there is a law, there's a din, but you don't want to accept it? Simply. We're not talking about there's a law that says don't drive on Shabbat, you don't want to accept it. You don't want to accept it, you're a heretic and you'll go to Gehenom forever. That's your problem. We're talking about what if there is a psak halacha that the Chachamim said, let's say in a bet din, you sued somebody else or somebody else sued you in a Jewish judicial court, and the decision was against you. Now, of course, you have to comply with that decision if you want to stay within the scope of Judaism as far as being someone that's accepted in the Keilah, because if you reject it, you'll go on cherem. But aside from that, what does that put you spiritually? if you simply don't want to agree. You don't want to agree, you don't agree, you think that they don't know what they're talking about, or perhaps they haven't looked into the details deep enough, or like some heretics like to say, they don't know what they don't know Judaism anymore, like this Meza Rasha Merusha that continues to make fun of the Torah while he promotes Christianity, but yet continues to call himself an Orthodox Jew. Baruch Hashem, there was a fantastic video that was released about him today by some group of tzaddikim that compiled a bunch of different heretical messages that he said, in the recent past. I can't even say all of the heretical messages that he said, because literally, if you calculate how many heretical messages he said, the world would end and the messages wouldn't. So, Baruch Hashem, for anyone that wants to see this particular clip, it's somewhere out there on the net. I believe the channel is called Heretics Exposed. And they have a couple of really good videos over there exposing some of the heretics out there, some that we know and some that we don't.
That means we don't know. I mean, it might be true, it might not be true. I mean, Jesus might be the Messiah or might not be the Messiah. Like, we don't know. Like, just like we don't know if Christianity is idolatry. I mean, you may think it's idolatry. Like, if the New Testament moves you, then it brings you closer to God and closer to Torah. I'm all for you studying it. Jesus, for sure, like, people could not disagree that he was a KIRUV worker. Like, he was an outreach worker. Why not? If you believe in so much Kabbalistic literature, which I believe is a lot more problematic than just 27 books of the New Testament, why not just throw like another Jewish mystic named Jesus into the mix? But doesn't mean that but they can't be my friends. I mean, I hang out with a lot of people who I got Messianics who come over to my house. So I don't care. I hold Messianic Judaism as a valid form of Judaism.
That Messianic Jews are your brothers. That's right, my friends. Messianic Jews are your brothers and your sisters. It doesn't matter who you think the Messiah happens to be, whether you believe it's the Lubavitcher Rebbe, whether you believe it's Rabbi Nachman, whether you believe it's Yeshua. It doesn't matter. Even if you believe that your Messiah is the Atzmut in a Guf, the divine essence in bodily form, we should embrace them as Jews.
But nonetheless, I am very much a fan of this type of work to at least expose some light onto the darkness, so people understand that there are certain people out there that are going to project darkness on the community. They're going to simply tell you that nobody is right except them. And the best part about it is that, what makes them, simply the worst of the worst is that they say that everybody else does that. Meaning they say that they're the only ones that comply with the law and everybody else is wrong. But it's obviously quite the opposite. How do we know it's quite the opposite? You simply look at what the Gedolei Ador wrote. What did they say? How did they say it? And so on and so forth. Who is the one that's sticking by the book? And who is, if you will, giving the book simply one of those symbols that means they care less about it. So the Chachamim were very, very careful before and continue to be very careful before they POSKIM and Halacha, before they tell you this is what the law is. If there is a new clarification made on how to utilize an existing Halacha in the Shulchan Aruch, or it is a psak din that's in your day-to-day life. You have a dispute with somebody, you go to a bet din, because we're not allowed to go to a regular secular court unless the bet din allows us to, which is usually not a common thing, especially for business issues and so on, unless the other person rejects the bet din. But nonetheless, a person needs to know, what does it mean when a chacham POSKIM and Halacha, when you see a responsa, a sefer responsa that clarifies what the Halacha is, what does it all mean? Do we really need all of these poskim? Not that there are so many millions of them or anything, but nonetheless, do we need these scholars that are telling us what to do? And bottom line is, this is what the law is. Do we need those people? What does it mean when someone is, let's say, a rabbi, i.e., somebody that's speaking to the people, somebody that's encouraging them, someone that's trying to get them to do tshuva, someone that does KIRUV, someone that's perhaps a charming person, perhaps maybe looks like me, but nonetheless, not a posek. Why? Simply didn't learn enough to become a posek. May Hashem have mercy on me. Maybe one day I will be. Today, I'm not a posek. Don't pretend to be a posek. But then there's a posek, which is my Rav Ephraim. Okay, and there's others like him. Now, these poskim, do we need them? Do we need them in the world? I mean, what's the difference? A lot of people could say, no, but I like Rabbi Reuven. I like Rabbi this one. I like Rabbi that. Yeah, but we're not poskim. Yeah, no, but I'll go whatever you say. There is no such thing, I'll go whatever you say. If I say something in the name of the posek, whether it's Rabbi Ovadia or any other posek that is accepted by the public, sure, you have to listen to me. But because it's not me, it's just me delivering the message to you. But if I'm just saying, no, you know what? My opinion is such and such. You don't have to listen at all. Why? It's not psak halacha. Unless somebody is the rabbi. The point being is, Rabotai, we have to know what we're dealing with, because a lot of people always, when they hear certain messages we have in shiurim, they always say, listen, we heard what you said in the shiur, and my local rabbi disagrees. Now, if I said my opinion, and your local rabbi disagrees with my opinion, your local rabbi is right. Why? He's entitled to disagree. But if I gave you what the psak halacha is, by Rav Ovadia, by Rav Elyashiv, by the Shulchan Aruch, by the Chafetz Chaim, by one of the Gedolei Ador, if I brought you them, there is no right, there is no permission to disagree. Why? That's the halacha. That's the halacha. Simple. Now, of course, the heretics are going to tell you, no, you could be your own posek. And there's nothing further than the truth. And that's one of the things we learned in this week's parasha, Parashat Korach. What did Korach do in a small scale? And we're going to discuss it further later. Korach simply decided to be his own posek. He decided that he's going to rule for himself. And he said to Moshe Rabbeinu, listen, Moshe, you said that God told you that we didn't hear God tell you this. We heard God tell you other stuff, but maybe you're assuming that we're just going to believe that everything else you say he told you. So we don't believe you. Bottom line, we don't believe you, Moshe Rabbeinu. We don't believe you. So you said that God said that you have to have one of the ptilim, one of the strings of the tzitzit, be blue. A special type of blue, tchelet, which most of the gdolim do not believe exists in the world because it comes from a unique animal. Some say that it does exist, but that's the few, that's the minority. The Gdolim, whether it's Rav Ovadia, Rav Elyashiv, and so on, many of them do not believe it exists anymore in the world, and that's why you're not going to see the majority of the Gedolei Ador wearing the tzitzit with the blue string. Everyone is wearing the tzitzit with simply the white. Now, of course, you're going to find, and I actually was given a chidush recently by a few people that watch, that Rav Mazuz and Rav Kook wear the tchelet. So they go by it. No problem. I didn't know that. Nonetheless, doesn't make them wrong, doesn't make them right. Just the point is that the halacha is that you're supposed to have this tchelet, and the chachamim, which is the majority, say that, listen, this tchelet, this special type of blue, doesn't exist in the world anymore because the animal itself doesn't exist anymore. Okay? They believe they found the animal, and that's why they use this tchelet. Now, Korach says, listen, you're saying you need to have one string that's blue, right? Tchelet. My wife told me, Korah says, my wife told me that instead of making the string blue, she'll make the whole garment blue, the whole talit blue, but the string's all white. That's okay, right? Moshe Rabbeinu says, no, it's not okay. Why? Because the halacha is a blue string, not a blue garment. Blue string. Korah says, no, I don't agree with your psak. And he did this with a few other things, with the mezuzah and so on. Korach wanted to be his own posek. His mouth couldn't stop talking with his own opinion. Even though you have the Gedol Ador, the Gedol Adorot, the biggest rabbi in the history of mankind, the biggest rabbi that will ever be, which is Moshe Rabbeinu, Isha Elokim, the man of God, he said no. Why? Because God told me no. You're saying yes, you're going against, not me, you're going against HaShem. But his mouth couldn't stop yapping, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu punishes measure for measure. His mouth couldn't stop yapping, going against the Torah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu opened the mouth of the ground, and it swallowed him and anyone that followed him. BeEzrat HaShem, it swallows all of the other heretics and Reshaim that do not want to do tshuva and continue yapping. But the key is to understand is that is this psak, not of Moshe Rabbeinu of 3,300 years ago, but rather of the Moshe Rabbeinus of your local communities, whether it be in Bnei Brak, in Har Nof, in New York, in different places, you have poskim. You have POSKIM, and then you have the Gedolei Hador. You have the biggest rabbis of the generation. Are they still applicable? Who are they? Why do we need to listen to them? Or should we even listen to them? That's one of the things that the Chazon Ish will clarify for us. Because he told us already that if a person will simply listen just to Musar, just for character development in order to become ethical without going in accordance to Halacha, he will develop not only no ethics, but evil ethics. Because he will not know when to use the tools that HaShem is teaching, when to use the tools that the sages are teaching. So you won't know when to be kind and when not to be kind, when to be humble and when not to be humble. There's even times that you're not allowed to be humble. There are times that you have to be humble. Most of the time you have to be humble, but there are certain times you're not allowed to be humble. When to be angry and when not to be angry. Most of the time you're not allowed to be angry, but there are times you have to be angry. If somebody's desecrating Hashem's name and so on. The point being is, if you're simply going to learn Musar, you're going to learn to develop your character to become a so-called ethical person, but you're not going to go in accordance with Halacha, Chazon Ish says you will become an evil person. On the other hand, if you only learn the law, you only learn the Halacha, but you're not going to learn Musar, you're definitely going to become an evil person. Why? You'll become one of those people that's Naval Birshut Torah, despicable in the name of a Torah, where he can tell you all the different laws, but he doesn't know how to utilize them. Where you have certain people, for example, people that watch my channel typically like the fact that we talk about rebuke, we talk about telling the truth, and so on and so forth. But I always tell you guys, especially in the last couple of years, as this issue itself has clarified more and more to me myself through experience, that there is a time and a place to rebuke, and most people simply don't do the calculation. I always assumed in the beginning that people would know when to use rebuke and when not to use rebuke. But many times people just want to spit fire at all times, whenever and however, and this is not necessarily the right way to do things. You have to know if you're the right vessel to begin with, number one. Number two, if this is the right place and the right time. Number three, if you're obligated to do it, or it's suggested that you do it, or it's obligated you don't do it. There are times and places to do certain things. But sometimes people just like to spit fire because they like to turn heads, but that's not necessarily going to bring people closer to Hashem. It is important to know that when and how to utilize these mitzvot. When and how to utilize these mitzvot. And if you simply don't know the halacha, just simply don't do anything until you learn the halacha and then do it. So now the Chazon Ish has told us time and time again that it's critical for us to open ourselves up to the Torah. Accept it completely, understand that we need to learn both Musar and Halacha, not one or the other, but rather both. But now, what about when the Halacha is tough for us to accept? What about when it gets to a point where it's tough for us to accept? So he starts here in the chapter 3, section number 16, as follows. One of the difficulties in accepting the results of a halachic judicial proceeding is that the absolute verdict is not an axiom, meaning it's not self-evident. You have a judgment, you have a disagreement with another Jew, and you go to the Bet Din. And the Chachamim of the Bet Din, whether it's one Dayan or three, simply are going to review everything you said, review everything he or she said, and they're going to come up with a conclusion. And sometimes that conclusion will be against you. Sometimes you'll see a Talmid Chacham go to the Bet Din. Why does he go to the Bet Din? Because he's sure he's right. No one's going to go to the Bet Din because they think they're wrong. If they think that they're wrong, they're just simply going to pay or do whatever they need to do. But if they think that they're right, they're going to go to the Bet Din. And they're a Torah scholar, so you would think that every Torah scholar that goes to a Bet Din for sure is going to win. But that's not necessarily the case. Sometimes the Torah scholar loses. Sometimes it's two different Torah scholars. And of course, only one of them wins. So the point is that one of the most difficult parts, the Chazon Ish says, is that the verdict itself, the outcome, is not an axiom. Meaning it's not something that is self-evident. That you could have just simply, oh yeah, you just missed this one point, and that's why this is the conclusion. That's not how a psak din works. It's not self-evident, it's not obvious. If it was obvious, you should have never even arrived at the court. If somebody told, listen, am I allowed to drive on Shabbat? That's an obvious. That's a simple law. Don't drive on Shabbat, not allowed to drive on Shabbat, except if there is a life danger. Simple. There's pikuach nefesh. You're driving somebody to the hospital. That's a mitzvah. But to drive to shul or anything like that, there's no permission whatsoever. No one's going to tell you you're allowed to drive on Shabbat if that person is an Orthodox Jew. Now, when there is an actual verdict, that verdict is not as clear as some of the other things, like I just mentioned, whether it's fire on Shabbat or whether you're allowed to steal and things of that nature. Rather, it's not an axiom, nor is it a simple notion. It comes about only through the toiling of the judge and its constant study of Torah. Meaning that dayan, that judge, that posek, is only going to arrive at a conclusion through his toil of Torah. Through his toil of Torah, his constant studying of the Torah, his constant studying of the circumstances themselves. Moreover, the verdict is given by a present-day judge, and the books of halacha at our disposal are not detailed enough so as to show anyone the clear verdict in any particular case, to the point that the stubborn one who rejects the judgment will not be able to disagree with this particular application of the law. Meaning, here he's saying a few extraordinary points. This verdict is not something that has to be given by Moshe Rabbeinu. It does not have to be given by Rabbi Yosef Karo. In fact, all of the books that we have, and we're talking about in Judaism, we have more books than all of the other religions, cults, cultures combined. There are literally millions and millions of books clarifying every single aspect of creation, whether it's how to honor Shabbat, or it's how to observe Shabbat, or how to have a good relationship with your spouse, how to raise children, how to raise a cattle, how to deal with the needs of the farm, how to do all types of things you can possibly imagine, how to make a tzitzit, what's the best way to do it, how to do certain prayers, how to handle a community, everything and anything you could possibly imagine. We have books about it, countless books about it. And everything has been, discussed by the Chachamim. But even with all of those millions and millions of books, the Chazon Ish says, the books of halacha at our disposal are not detailed enough to show anyone the clear verdict in any particular case. Meaning, despite the fact that we have all of these books, despite the fact that all of the Chachamim looked at every single different way that you could look at something, they didn't discuss everything that will ever be. Why? Because certain things change. They talked about an accident in the Torah where you have a bull who is an aggressive bull and he hits somebody, perhaps kills them or injures them. What happens? Then they start saying, okay, now we don't just have bulls, we have horses and carriages, and things change. Perhaps it's cars. And today, you'll have a situation where a guy with a SUV truck runs into a guy with a little tustus. But he has this type of car, and he didn't look, and he was going on a place where there's no speed limit, and there's all types of circumstances that change in the world. Different places in the world, weather, people, society, there's countless different things that change. Not all of these things were discussed in one particular place where it's clear you could say, oh, what happens if a Mitsubishi runs into a Toyota on Route 9 at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, when it's clear day and there's not even a cloud in the sky, and both of the people are expert drivers. Doesn't have that. It has certain things, and the POSKIM have to look at different things that are similar, gathering the information from all the POSKIM before in order to arrive at a clear decision. They can't just simply say, oh yeah, that question, that situation you have right now, yeah, that's in this book, and let me tell, oh yeah, Mitsubishi for sure wins. Mitsubishi for sure, yeah, listen, Mitsubishi for sure has to win. Yeah, but he ran into a BMW. Oh, BMW, hold on a second, get a different book. No, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. There has to be certain things. Or, for example, like the hot topic in the news over these last several months when it comes to the issues of git, of gitting, of women that are divorcing their husbands, or husbands divorcing their wives, and you have the issue where the husband does not want to give the wife a get. Now, the feminist in the world automatically will say, listen, a husband is not willing to give a get to his wife, not allowed to release her. Oh, that's a prison. He's wrong. He's terrible. We should do a protest outside of his house, like some idiots made a film about recently, and even had a few rabbis join them, where they made a whole film about how, practically saying that every woman that is not released from a husband, not getting a get from a husband, automatically the woman is right, and automatically we have to force the husbands to give the get to the wife. This is, Rabotai, apikolsut, heresy. It's not true at all. Not every woman is entitled to get a get. Why? Because that's the halacha. Not every woman is entitled to get a get, and there are different circumstances. You can't just say just because she wants a divorce, like in the secular world, she should be entitled to get a divorce and move on with our life. That's not how Judaism works. Now, if you have a problem with that, you have to learn why that's the case. You can't just say just because she's a woman, automatically she's a victim. Just because she wants to leave, automatically she should be allowed to leave and marry on her own, and so on and so forth. And any husband that keeps their wife without giving them a get is an evil person, is this, is that, and we should protest against them. That is the viewpoint of the feminists. That is the viewpoint of the heretics. That's not the viewpoint of Judaism. In Judaism, there are circumstances where you should not give her a get. And in fact, that's the punishment for a woman that does what she does and she doesn't get a get for 30 years, for 50 years, for the rest of her life. Why? Let's say, for example, that woman, Zanta, she cheated on her husband. Or perhaps she hasn't cheated yet, but she wants to go with another guy. She wants to go with another guy. She doesn't love her husband anymore. I don't like him anymore. He smells funny. He's ugly. I don't like him anymore. I want to go with Steve from the gym. I met him when I was doing yoga. He was one of the instructors, and I didn't realize that obviously I'm not even allowed to go to such a place, because in Judaism you're not allowed to do such a thing. But nonetheless, I went and exercised with my long hair, long wig, long whatever, showed my stuff, and Steve was very cute, and Steve is wants to be my husband. So I want to marry Steve. If you were a Goya, if you were a non-Jew, go ahead and do what you want. You don't even have to get a get. You don't have to get anything. You could just go do what you want. Why? Simply, in a non-Jewish world, there is no issue of marriage to that extent where you're obligated to stay with anyone or you owe anyone anything. You can be with somebody. You don't want to be with them, simply leave. That's it. That's the end of the marriage. Even the civil marriage where they have in the court system in the US and different countries where they make you sign some paperwork and they go to the court and then so on, that's not an obligation. You don't want to be with each other, you can just go to somebody else, be married to somebody else, as long as you're not with two people at the same time. That's adultery. But the key is, in a Jewish world, it doesn't work that way. Why? You have a ketubah. Ketubah means the husband bought you. Yes, as politically incorrect as that is, that's the truth. The husband bought you in return to meet these terms. In the ketubah, there are three major terms in there. He has to put a roof over your head, he has to buy you the things that you need, and he has to be with you intimately whenever you want. Those are the three major principles that you have there. As long as he meets those terms that you originally agree with, you have no right to go anywhere else. What about if you fell out of love with him, like all the modern girls like to say, oh, I don't love him anymore, I fell out of love. You fell on your head. On your head you fell. Or you should fall and you had to fix your head. Why? There's no such thing. No such thing, Rabotai, in Judaism. If you were doing what you were supposed to as a kosher Jewish woman, there is no falling out of love. In fact, the love only grows from the husband and from the wife. But now she went and she found Steve in the gym. She found Steve in the local Starbucks, and she wants to be with Steve. It would be real shame to give such a woman a get. A real shame. He's allowed to give her a get, but it would be a shame to give such a woman a get. Why? She is acting like a prostitute, like a zonah. To give her a get would be wrong. Would simply be wrong. Why? Because that's not the agreement. She's violating the agreement and she wants her husband to suffer because of it? Absolutely not. Now, of course, the feminists are going to come and try to hang us on our heads and say, oh, you guys are ancient, you're archaic, you're chauvinist, you're this and that. No, we're simply Jews. That's how Judaism works. She wants to be a zonah. We don't have to applaud her for it. We don't have to agree with it. We don't have to say, oh yeah, just because she wants to be this way, therefore whatever, we'll find somebody else. No. Why do that? In fact, not giving her a get is part of the punishment that the Torah says you're supposed to do even. Now, if he chooses to give her a get, by all means, he can. Who would want to be with such a woman anyway? But nonetheless, to just simply call out all of the husbands and assume that they're all wrong and siding with the women automatically, number one, for sure, is apikolsut, is heresy. Number two, it shows that the people that are guiding them are in fact misguiding them. Why? They simply don't know the halacha. They don't know the halacha. They don't know the halacha well enough, or perhaps their ego is getting in the way. Whichever, or perhaps their eyes are looking the wrong way. Either way, this is not the way to go about it. And that's why you're not going to see the biggest rabbis in the world ever have these conferences that they always want to get together to discuss all the agunot, the poor victims that don't get to get. They're not all poor victims. Surely some of them are victims. Some of these guys are criminals. No doubt about it. But you can't just assume they're all criminals. You can't just assume they're all right. Every judge has to review the case detail by detail. Detail by detail. And to openly agree or disagree with, in general terms, is simply wrong. Simply wrong. This is why you need the Dayanim to be extraordinary Talmidei Chachamim that also have Yirat Shamayim. Have fear of the Almighty, because they know it's their Olam Haba on the line. It's their Olam Haba on the line. And you'll see that many times the women that make a big stink out of it, it's usually not because the guy is such a bad guy. It's usually not the case. Sometimes it is, but usually it's not. So, here we see the Chazon Ish says that all of the books that we have, the millions of books we have in the Torah, are not enough to make clear every single circumstance that you could possibly have. So what do? How do we arrive at a psak halacha? He says that the person that's stubborn, the person that's obstinate, that doesn't want to accept things for what they are, accept the judgment of the Talmidei Chachamim, he's surely going to come up with excuses and disagree with the law. So how do we come up with an actual law if it's not black and white? Only those who devote themselves totally to understanding its truth will find it after much perseverance and deep study of Torah, so much so that the judge, the Dayan, and the verdict really become one and the same. Here we see another clarification on what Hashem said in the Parashat Bereshit, that he created man in his image. What does it mean he created man in his image? He gave us the ability to be like him. Now Hashem, one of the extraordinary things that's beyond human comprehension is the fact that he is not parts, contrary to what Christianity says, that he's three parts, or other religions that believe that he has messengers and he needs the god of lightning and the god of rain and all types of other pieces. In Judaism, all of that is considered idolatry. What we believe in the Torah, what we know to be true, what he said himself is, there's nothing else but him, meaning he is complete. He is one. His opinion, his past, his present, his future, everything is one. He is not separated from his words. He's not separated from his thoughts. He's not separated from his memories. There's no parts to Hashem. Like you and I are separate from our thoughts. We're separate from our thoughts. We could have thoughts today and tomorrow forget that we even had those thoughts. Or 5 minutes from now, forget we even had those thoughts. Because those thoughts are not necessarily part of us. They're part of our past. They're part of perhaps of our future, present. But they're not necessarily all part of us at all times. Hashem, everything is single part. One. That's what you mean when you say, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. What does Echad mean? Echad means one. One means he is single. Everything is just one. He doesn't have parts. He doesn't have a past. He doesn't have a future. He doesn't have a present. He's all one. He doesn't have thoughts that are separate from him or feelings that are separate from him. And the only times you'll see in the Torah where it says that Hashem was angry or Hashem was happy or things like that is simply to make it sweeter to our human ear, our practically disabled ear that we have, to understand what he's presenting us in this particular circumstance, in order to allow us to understand what he wants. But it's not that he's separate from his feelings. He's separate from his anger, as if the anger is bigger than him and he can't control it. Or he loves Avraham Avinu and his love is separate from him, as if the love is overcoming him. There's no such thing as separation with Hashem. Hashem is one. That's one of the most extraordinary things that a person needs to understand. And many times people that are not clear on what Hashem is as far as the basics, and they delve into the mystical teachings of the Kabbalah, of Chassidut, things like the Zohar and things of that nature, and they start learning about the different aspects of Hashem, the different ways that Hashem presents himself. They start thinking worse than the Christians sometimes. They start thinking that Hashem is not 3 pieces. They think Hashem is 10 pieces. And obviously there's no more, there's nothing worse than that. Hashem is one. He presents himself to us in different ways. What is that like? To give you a microcosm of an example, because there's no way to present really Hashem for what he is, but just a microcosm of an example. You right now are listening to my voice. You may also see the presentation of my body because you're watching a video. So you're seeing one aspect of this lecture. Another person could be viewing this lecture in a different way. How? They could simply be listening just to the audio on our app or on SoundCloud or one of the other beautiful ways that HaKadosh Baruch Hu merited us to have our lectures delivered to the 4 corners of the world, where they're just listening to the audio. You're both getting the same exact message. You're just getting the message in different ways. You're getting the message in different ways. Perhaps you are standing right outside my door, and you are listening to my voice. You're not listening to it to a technology media, but rather you're listening to the real voice, but it's behind the wall. Or another person is sitting, let's say, right next to me. He's listening to me and he sees it right this second now. Or perhaps somebody was next to me when I was studying for the shiur. Okay, so different people are getting the message in different ways. So it's not that it's a different message. It's not that it's a different person. It's all the same thing. It's just different facets of the same thing. Okay, so that's in essence, a microcosm of an example of oversimplification, of an example of when you see in Kabbalistic language and things like that, that Hashem has these different aspects of himself. Different aspects of himself, which could easily be confused with thinking that Hashem has parts. Hashem by no means has parts. He never had parts. He never will have parts. That's 100% idol worship. And those people that go into that world of teaching too early can easily fall into the trap of idol worship, even though they mean well. So that's why the Chachamim, even the great Arizal, says that a person that's not beki, meaning an expert in all of the fundamentals of Judaism, all of the Shulchan Aruch, all of the Gemara, all of the major POSKIM, the Rishonim, the Achronim, all of the major things in Judaism, and is also mature, at least like a 40-year-old person, should not even open a page in these types of teachings. Why? Because they're not fit. They're not suitable for that type of teachings. Unfortunately, today, in order to entice the masses to go into a place where where they want to get people to learn, they tell them they're going to teach them mystical stuff. And many times you see people that don't even know Aleph Bet. They don't know Aleph Bet. They've never even read the whole Chumash with commentary by Rashi a single time. They don't know the basics of Ilchot Shabbat or even how to eat kosher. They don't know anything, but they go and attend some of these lectures, or they listen to some of these lectures, or perhaps buy some of these books, and they go into a never land of confusion. And then it's no surprise that these people end up becoming big heretics, unfortunately. Well, you can have a woman walking around with Shem Yishmo, with no arms and no legs, but thinking that she's holy. She's holy because she is living in the world of Atzilut. She's worrying of the, she's living. She thinks that she's living in a different dimension because of the things that she was taught or mistaught. So here we know that the Chazon Ish is clarifying to us is that because the Torah was given to Moshe Rabbeinu in a certain fashion, where he was given the entire Torah, he was given in Mount Sinai, the written Torah up to Parashat Yitro, which is up to the point of it's written, the narrative is written up to the point of Mount Sinai. And then the rest of the narration, or that's written in the 5 books of Moses, was given to him over the next 40 years. Over the next 40 years, with the exception of the book of Deuteronomy, which was in essence the personal journal that Moshe Rabbeinu wrote with Ruach HaKodesh. So Hashem added that to the other 4 books, which became the 5 books of Moses. Now, that's not the only thing that Moshe Rabbeinu got. Moshe Rabbeinu got the oral Torah. What's the oral Torah? All of the details that explain what the written Torah is saying. Because the written Torah is not just a book that tells us what happened, but rather predominantly what it is, it's a book of laws. From the beginning all the way to the end, we learn different laws. Unlike what some heretics think, that the mitzvah of Pur Bu, to have children, to bring children and multiply, that was given to Adam HaRishon before the Torah was made, so therefore it's not really a biblical mitzvah. Babkis. There is nothing more heretical than such a statement. Complete nonsense. This is a mitzvah from the Torah to produce and bring children to the world, and Chachamim say at least 1 boy and 1 girl. But nonetheless, a person that does not bring children to the world has a very serious problem. And Chachamim say that a person that intentionally does not bring a child to the world, doesn't bring a boy to the world, will go to kafakela, which we're going to have that shiur at some point, BeEzrat Hashem, when I finish learning that entire sugya. To the best of my ability, we'll have that shiur of what kafakela means, because it's not just 1 kafakela, it's 10 kafakelas, which is a world apart from what we thought until now. So the point is that a person that leaves this world without having a child will go, special aside from his violation of Shabbat and all types of other things. Just that alone goes to kafakela. Just for that alone. Now, a person that says this mitzvah because it was given before the Torah was given, therefore it's not a biblical mitzvah, it's complete nonsense. The entire Torah is a book of laws. Predominantly a book of laws. Secondary is telling us the narration of certain things. But what the Chachamim do in the oral Torah, which begins with the Mishnah, the Gemara, the Midrashim, then you have the Shulchan Aruch, the Zohar, and so on and so forth, the POSKIM. All of that is part of the oral Torah. And the Gemara in Yerushalmi says, the Jerusalem Talmud says, that Moshe Rabbeinu was taught everything. Everything in the Torah, even if it's a new thing that is clarified by a scholar today, a young scholar today, that was taught to Moshe Rabbeinu at Mount Sinai. That was taught to Moshe Rabbeinu at Mount Sinai. So how come, for example, you have the heretics, especially the Messianics, say, well, how come when it came to war, it says that Moshe Rabbeinu has to go to the Urim and Tumim, or Aaron, a Kohen needs to go to Urim and Tumim. What, didn't he know the law? First of all, you should know, the Urim and Tumim were there to tell us whether to go to war or not. They were a special tool that Hashem gave us. That's number 1. Special tool of when to go to war. That's one of the main things. It wasn't utilized to ask the Urim and Tumim, should he keep Shabbat, should he not keep Shabbat? Is this kosher, is this not kosher? That's not what it was utilized for. It was utilized for things that are momentary at that moment. So that's number one. Number two, it's very important to know that Moshe Rabbeinu received everything, but there are certain things that Hashem left vague, even to Moshe Rabbeinu. The clarity of the law, the intricate details of the law, he left open for the Chachamim that would come later on, all the way until today, the POSKIM, the scholars who toil in Torah, for them to interpret the law based on the basic fundamentals that were given at Mount Sinai, based on the basic foundation that's been given from generation to generation to generation up until today, from the written Torah, or orally given for many years, then the Mishnah, then the Gemara, then you have all of the different sages throughout the ages until you have the Rambam, then you have the Rabbi Yosef Karo and the Rama with the Shulchan Aruch 500 years ago, and all the way until today we have the great poskim, whether it's Rav Ovadia or the Chazon Ish, the Chafetz Chaim, and so on. All of these great sages, they are continuing to interpret the law and apply it to today. These details, although they were, the fundamentals were taught to Moshe Rabbeinu, there are certain things that Hashem left open and vague for the Chachamim of the generation to interpret, in order to make them partners in the Torah. Them, but not just anybody. Them, and not just any Joe Schmo that decides that he's going to be a posek. Because they know how to stay loyal and true to the actual fundamentals of the Torah, and not just simply discredit anyone that came before them as if they're equivalent or on the same ground. So there are certain rules that we have in the Torah that you have to know and you have to be an expert in order to even know how to POSKIM and Halacha. Now, here the Chazon Ish says that when it comes to all of the books that we have, all of these books will give us different details, different facets of the same diamond, and it's up to the Chacham. It's up to the Posek to utilize all of these different tools in order to arrive at the single truth to the extent that he becomes one with the law. What does it mean he becomes one with the law? Just like HaShem is one with his opinion, with the past, with the present, with the future. There is no separation. This Chacham becomes one with the law to the point where he is arrived at a single truth. He has saw the light, and once you see the light, darkness is no longer possible. Darkness is no longer possible. It's just like when, for example, people that were brought up in idolatry or perhaps in secularism, where they thought that, perhaps maybe there's a God, but it's a different God, or maybe there's a God, but he doesn't care, all types of false beliefs that are in the world. But one day they saw a video, or they were inspired by some rabbi, or they something woke them up, some type of event woke them up, and they discovered the truth. They discovered the truth. They discovered that Christianity is complete falsehood. They discovered that Islam is complete falsehood. They discovered that secularism is complete falsehood. They discovered that the only truth that exists in this world is the Torah of Hashem. That's the only truth that exists. Once they saw that truth, there is no undoing it. Not only there's no undoing it, where somebody could tell them, listen, it's not true. You can't just do that. Unless their belief is very weak, which means they haven't really seen the truth, the full truth yet. But more importantly, even if they say, listen, I grew up with beliefs in idolatry of Christianity and so on, but now I know that Christianity is fake and the Torah is the only thing that's real. Now, even if someone like an Asher Meza, Shem Reshaim Yirkav, or anybody that from One for Israel, or Manis, or any of these heretics confuse them to their philosophical-minded idolatry that they have, and they say, no, listen, the Judaism that you have started accepting in your life, it's too extreme, it's too this, you can go a different way, and so on. Even if they confuse them to go into some other, heretical belief, they're still never going to return to their original belief. Why? Because that was already canceled out. Once a person has seen the light versus the darkness they were in, there is no going back. There is no going back. Now, the closer they get to the ultimate light, there is no going anywhere. Once a person sees the truth for what it is, there is no such thing as, if this happens, I'm not going to keep Shabbat. If this happens, I'm not going to keep mitzvot anymore. There's no such thing as going off the derech. Because once a person sees the truth and the light for what it is, there is no other form of life for that person. Everything else is considered death. Simply. Death, emptiness, whatever other adjective you want to use to describe it, it's simply a non-existence. They rather simply die than have any other type of belief. And this is why the Chachamim, like for example, the famous story with Rav Ovadia, Alav Shalom, he was addicted to Torah, he loved the Torah, he studied Torah, he taught Torah non-stop, and in the end of his days, before he was taken from the world into Olam Haba, Rav Ovadia was very, very sick, but he continued toiling in Torah to the best of his abilities, but at one point, he simply could not learn Torah anymore. It just was not possible for him to learn Torah anymore, and his own son, Rabbi Yitzchak Yosef, says he heard him say to Hashem, Hashem, if I'm not going to be able to learn Torah, take me. And within 24 hours, HaKadosh Baruch Hu took him. That's how it was. Why? Once a person sees the light, there is no other form of existence. Oh, you know what? I can't learn Torah, but let me lay down on the couch, maybe play with the grandkids. No such thing. No such thing. Once a person sees the truth, that's their only life. That's their only light. Everything else is darkness and death. So here we see that only the people that devote themselves totally to understanding its truth, the truth of the real law, the truth of the Torah itself, will find it after much perseverance and deep study. If you are just learning what you're learning simply by somebody giving it to you on a silver platter, whether it's through a lecture that I give or somebody else is giving, or perhaps you heard it from somebody, this is allowed, this is not allowed, that's not necessarily considered toiling. It's good that you're learning, but it's not considered toiling to the point where you cannot separate yourself from that law. Why? Because you didn't work for it. You didn't work for it. You asked, am I allowed, not allowed? Somebody says you're allowed. Okay, allowed, good, I like allowed. Now, some time passes, and somebody looks at you and says, no, it's not allowed. Ooh, what do you mean it's not allowed? And he gives you 2, 3, 4 different reasons why it's not allowed. Because you did not toil to find out why it is allowed, and you simply took it on a silver platter, you're not going to be fully committed to that law, to that truth, like somebody that did toil over it. Why? Because it didn't become yours. You just did it because somebody said it's okay. But as soon as somebody gives you the objection, all of a sudden, you are you go to the other side perhaps. So here he's telling us that the judge and the judgment become one. Meaning the posek, whether you're going to find them in the Gemara, we see the Chachamim debating with each other, and sometimes the students of Bet Shammai and the students of Bet Hillel would get into a physical fight with swords, almost killing each other. Why? They're murderers? No, the Chachamim, they ended up marrying their children to each other. Why are they fighting? Why is this? Sometimes it got so violent because they both toiled over the Torah, arrived using the same rules, the same fundamental rules, arrived at two different truths. And now the other person, the chavruta, the other side, is saying the opposite of their truth. So to them, they toiled so much over this truth. They know it's true. They're not like believe it's true. They know it's true. Because they see the truth, because they toiled over it, they used all the rules, they arrived at the truth. The other side also toiled and knows it's true. They're both right. Both are true. But now they're fighting over it tooth and nail, and sometimes get literally violent. Sometimes get really, really sharp with the language. Not street language and filth, but literally really get aggressive with each other. Why? Because to them, they've become one with the law. they've become one with the Torah. There is nothing else, which means that you are telling me something that will bring me death. Your truth is my death. It cannot be the case. It cannot be the case that your truth is mine. Unless you prove to me that your truth and I'm wrong, there's no way. And they fight tooth and nail for their truth. And Chachamim say, Zeh v'zeh divrei Elokim chaim. This and this are the words of the living God. Now could be said about the Chachamim of the Gemara, of the Mishnah, these giants among giants. But nonetheless, even the giants of the current generation will sometimes, you will see, will POSKIM Halacha different from each other. As long as everybody complied with the rules and did whatever was necessary, you could have two different truths. You could have multiple opinions. But nonetheless, it's not everywhere, it's not so common, but nonetheless, it's important to know that if it is coming from people that toiled over the Torah, they are not just saying their opinion. They're saying who they are. They're saying what they are. That law, that point that may not even be significant to you, that's who they are. That's their essence. Now, this is one of the factors that gives the Satan, the Chazon Ish says, plenty of room to make the litigants go astray and shrug off the decision. The Satan misleads the litigant with smooth talk, causing him to think that the verdict was a result of the heart of the judge, tending towards the other litigant, and that the judge didn't really understand the suit completely, saying things like, "There is no doubt that I'm right." But the judge, the Dayan, didn't delve into the details enough. He lacks the necessary understanding of my frame of mind and wishes. His judgment was based solely on uncritical thought and his own natural tendencies. Is it possible that I'm obligated to subjugate myself to such a distorted verdict? The people that do not accept Da'at Torah for what it is will discredit it in a rational way. How? They're not saying, "I hate rabbis." They're not saying, "I think you're stupid." No, they're simply comparing the rabbis to themselves. They're comparing the rabbi, the Dayan, the Talmid Chacham, they're comparing them to all people. Listen, they're just people, and they have emotions, and I have emotions. They have their tendencies, and I have my tendencies. They have their bias, I have my bias. Obviously, this Dayan doesn't understand how important this judgment is for me. Obviously, this Dayan doesn't know me. He doesn't know how honest I am. He doesn't know how smart I am. He doesn't know all the things that he doesn't understand. He probably knows this guy. He probably lives in the same community. He probably likes him better. He probably looks at him, maybe he's a bigger donor. He this, he that. And listen, Dayan is a good guy, but he has a bias. I saw even the way he looked at him. Yeah, he has a bias. And he thinks that the Dayan, perhaps because of these different tendencies and biases, didn't really look into the intricate details of the situation and therefore arrive at the wrong conclusion. This, the Chazon Ish says, is the work of the Satan himself. Going to kosher people. We're not talking about non-kosher people that are looking to be heretics, like the ones we've discussed earlier. No, we're talking about sometimes this will happen to otherwise a kosher person that likes rabbis, likes the Torah, keeps Shabbat, keeps the law, even learns Torah, but doesn't have emunat chachamim, does not have faith in our sages, does not have a clarity of what a posek is. Not just what his job is, what his role is, but rather what his siyata dishmaya is in the world. How much he gets help from Hashem. He doesn't understand that. He thinks he's a person that puts his pants one leg at a time just like me. Therefore, he can make common mistakes like me. He has biases just like I have biases. He has problems like I have problems. And therefore, he discredits them without necessarily thinking that he's doing anything evil. In fact, he thinks he's doing them a favor, saying, listen, they made a mistake, so if I listen to them, if I listen to their false judgment that's against me, I'm going to be causing them to suffer because Hashem is going to put them in Gehenom for that bad judgment. So surely, I'm not going to listen to them. I'm doing them a favor by not listening to them. This is the work of the Satan, Rabotai. This is the work of the Satan. Now, a person needs to understand that having a bias is a normal human tendency. Having a bias. And it's a famous story of one of the great POSKIM from the 1600s, 400 years ago or so, named Rabbi Shabtai Katz, a Kohen, also known as the Shach. Now the Shach had a din Torah, had a situation with a certain merchant where they had a disagreement. Okay, what do Jews do when they have a disagreement? Simply, you go to Bet Din. Now the Shach, he's the Av Bet Din. So obviously he can't judge himself. At the same time, he can't go to the other Bet Dins in his community or anywhere near him because everyone knows he's the Gdol Hador. He's the biggest rabbi of the generation. Who wants to judge the biggest rabbi of the generation, the biggest tzaddik of the generation? Who wants to dare say anything to the Shach? Especially that he wrote a whole sefer about the Shulchan Aruch, going into the intricate details of Yoreh De'ah and so on. Certain section of the Shulchan Aruch. He knows better than us. We're going to judge him. If he has a case, surely he's right. But we can't just say surely he's right because that's a bias. So what do? So the Shach obviously knew this, and he said, okay, we need to go to a different town where they don't know who I am. You know, in those days, 400 years ago, they didn't have internet and messages and pictures everywhere. A Chacham can go into a town, he could be the biggest Chacham in the world, and nobody would even know who he is. There's certain times, for example, that the Rambam went to different parts of the world, he couldn't even tell who's Jewish. Because he saw the Moroccans and the Jews, they all looked the same. And the Jews looked like the Moroccans because they didn't want to look anything unique, because there was a decree against them that if they looked Jewish and presented them as Jewish, they would kill them. There was very difficult times in Morocco at times, and very, very good times in Morocco certain times. For example, there was one time where the Sultan of Morocco hated the Torah so much that he took one of the Gedolei Hador from the Abu Chatzira family, the oldest brother of the Baba Sali, his oldest brother. He was his senior by 21 years, older than him. And he wanted to make such a statement, this Rasha Merusha Sultan, that he tied him to a tree and shot him with a cannon. Shot him with a cannon, destroying obviously him and killing him in front of everybody. And the Baba Sali says that he was so depressed after this, seeing this vile way of horrific way of how his oldest brother, the biggest rabbi in the world, biggest mikubal in the world, get murdered with cold blood like this, that he couldn't leave the bed for 4 years. Couldn't leave the bed. He was so depressed. Crying and crying because he was his brother, he was his teacher, he was his everything. Until 4 years later, his brother came to him in a dream with Avraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, and says to him, get out of bed. Stop being sad. There's nothing to be sad. Look where I am. I'm with Avraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. That decree had to happen to save Jews. And Baba Sali came and uplifted the Torah and helped a lot of people, countless people, eventually leaving Morocco, going to Eretz Yisrael, and having an extraordinary impact on people. Extraordinary impact. Now, on the other hand, there were times in Morocco where you had very, very special sultans or kings over there that protected the Jews. For example, during the Holocaust. During the Holocaust, Hitler, Yimach Shimo v'Zichro, sent people to go to the Moroccan king and say, give me the Jews, hand me the Jews, and I won't harm anybody, won't come in here. And the Moroccan king that could have easily handed over the Jews, there were plenty of Jews in Morocco, could have easily handed over all of the Jews and spared himself any attack from obviously a much stronger army. The Nazis were conquering the whole world. But this Moroccan king, who literally gained himself olam haba with this decision, said to Hitler, Imach Shimo, there is no Jews here. We're all one people. You want them, you have to come through me. Imagine that. A person buys their olam haba in a single decision, a single second. Doesn't owe anything to the Jews. If anything, he's endangering his own people and himself. No, Jews are holy people. He defended them, and Hitler and the rest of his people just couldn't understand his decision. HaKadosh Baruch Hu made them go somewhere else. They never went. So this is obviously a good king. And already we had a few generations of good kings in Morocco, so much so that they made the new Rav of Morocco, Rav Yeshayahu Pinto, Sheikhye. I used to go to his shiurim in my early stages of tshuva. I love the shiurim in New York. He's an extraordinary chacham. Comes from one of the oldest Jewish families out there, the Pinto family, full of mikubalim, tzaddikim, and so on. The point is that now Morocco is under good leadership, under good people, it's so much so that Rav Pinto says that this could be a fantastic place for Jewish people. That people are probably going to have more freedom over there for religion, for Judaism, than they may even have in Eretz Yisrael, Hashem Yishmor. It's a sad reality because of everything that's happening out there. Now, the point is, Rabotai, is that different things change at different times. The Torah itself doesn't change. Torah itself doesn't change. The Chachamim are using our Torah, are using the basic fundamentals of the Torah in order to apply the Torah to the generation by using the same exact rules. They're not changing the rules. They know how to do it. A person that discredits the Chachamim, has no value for the Chachamim, is simply never going to see such a thing. So now, when a Chacham, like the Rav Shach, comes to his own city and tells them, you need to POSKIM Halacha for me, they're not going to be able to do it. So he needs to go to a different place. He needs to go to a place where they don't know him. So they go to a different city where they heard that there is a very big Chacham over there, and they go to the Chacham and they say, listen, we have a din Torah between this person and that person. We want you to judge between us. And they tell him what the situation is, and the Chacham POSKIM Halacha in favor of the Shach. Now, the Shach, although he thought he was in favor, that's why he goes to a Bet Din, he was still surprised. How did you arrive at this halacha? What did you do? What is your source for this psak halacha? And the Chacham tells him, well, there's this Chacham, there's another Chacham, big Chacham, named the Shach, who wrote a Sefer, a Shulchan Aruch, commentary on the Shulchan Aruch. It's a fantastic Sefer, it's full of emet, and this exact issue is mentioned in that Sefer, and that's what I used. The Shach starts crying to himself. He says, oi to me, oi to me. Look how much bias I had towards myself that I forgot what I wrote myself. Meaning, I had a certain situation. He had a certain situation. I didn't think of telling him, listen, I already have all the proofs in the world because I covered this, I learned this, and I wrote it in my book. I didn't even think of that. I just simply I was right. I was biased on myself. So much so that I forgot that I even wrote what the actual law is here. I forgot. That's how biased a person can be. This, Rabotai, is very important for a person to know. Why? Because the Gemara in Masechet Shabbat and a few other places says, "En adam roeh chova be'atzmo." A person does not see his own obligation. A person doesn't see his own deficiencies. A person doesn't see his own lackings. Everyone is naturally biased for themselves. This is even more so of a reason of why a person needs, the Chachamim needs to have a serious rabbi tell him yes or no based on what the Psak Halacha is. But when people start going rabbi shopping, they start listening to 3, 4, 5 different rabbis for every single question, those people surely will be taken to the wrong path, surely will end up becoming one bowl of confusion, and unfortunately could lead other people in a wrong direction as well. Now, the problem is today that you have a generation where Rabbi Ephraim says it's a generation of rabbi instant. What does it mean, rabbi instant? Like, people don't want to necessarily cook every day or even often. So what do? Microwave dinners. Microwave dinners, they go by something. Oh, this is going to be my 5 meals for the week or 7 meals for the week. Put it in the microwave. 1 minute later, that's it. I have the food. Food's ready. I only have to do is I don't have to cook nothing. Just take it out of the box. Sometimes not even that. Put it in the microwave. Press start because I already have it programmed to be the exact timing. And that's it. I have my dinner. Sometimes even have some new technology today. They don't even have to do that. Where there's certain packages, I know they have it in Israel, I don't know if they have it in America, certain packages of food where as you open the package is a chemical reaction that automatically heats the food. Unbelievable. Lowering the amount of effort that people have to do even to go to the microwave. Why? That's the generation we have. People want things instantly. And that's why they ask a question for the rabbi and they don't want to wait for the answer. They want it right now. Rabbi's busy, not busy, doesn't make a difference. Oh, he's busy right now, I'll go to a different rabbi. Today with WhatsApp and all the different applications and different ways, I have some people, they send a question to me on email or something else, and they're copying like 5, 10, 20 different rabbis on the same email. Like whoever answers them first. Those people I never answer. Never answer. Why? It's just going to lead to confusion and so on. These people don't understand. They're not looking for an answer. They're looking for a convenience. But people want something instant, and they're not willing to wait for it. They want something right away. This is why, by the way, Rabbi Yitzchak Yosef, one of the biggest rabbis in the generation, the head rabbi of Eretz Yisrael for the Sephardi people, says these people that are doing these different types of shows on the radio where they're just concluding major halachic questions, not the simple stuff, the basics, like some of the things we do in Stump the Rabbi, but serious stuff. They POSKIM right away in one show, things that require toil and details and so on. They give answers to people by the dozens without really much consideration, second opinions or anything. He says, not the right way to do it. Not the right way to do it. To be a rabbi instant is not the right way to do it, but also to be the student that's expecting the instant answer, where if you don't answer them within their required time frame, they start sending you question marks. Rabbi, are you there? I sent you a question 3 minutes ago. You still didn't answer. Everything okay? What happened? What's going on? Why aren't you answering me? Did I do something? Did I offend you somewhere? Am I going to Gehenom? Like, buddy, I'm not sitting there all day waiting for your question. There's hundreds of other people, and I also have other things to do. No, but if you don't answer them right away, or if you don't answer them at all, a day passes, 2 days pass. Oh, yeah, this rabbi, no, I think he has something against me. Yeah, maybe I don't donate enough. Or maybe it's because he doesn't like me. Or maybe it's because my wife wears a wig. Or maybe it's because I'm not really this. Or maybe it's because... No, Habibi, it's nothing. It's nothing. You don't have to make up something out of it. Simple. Number one, certain things require time to answer. Number two, there's other people in the world other than you. Number two. Number three, some questions, Rabbi doesn't want to answer. Simple. Rabbi doesn't want to answer. There's certain questions the Rabbi doesn't want to answer. Sometimes people ask you questions where they want you to make a psak halacha, not just a simple, is this allowed, not allowed? Am I allowed to drive on Shabbat, not allowed to drive on Shabbat? Am I allowed to date, am I not allowed to date? No, they want to ask you specific details of certain things, and they want you to start writing them a whole elaborate explanation or recording. Who wants to do that all day? Who has time to do that all day? But that's the reality. People want rabbis on demand, and that's not a good thing. That's not a good thing. That's the generation that we have right now, and that's a very, very big problem. Nonetheless, it's something that we have to deal with. Now, when a person understands that it takes time to arrive at the truth, it takes toil to arrive at the truth, they understand that if they really are looking for the truth, there shouldn't be a clock. There shouldn't be a condition. There shouldn't be... if he's not going to answer me, or if he's not going to answer me the way I want, I'm just going to go somewhere else. If you're seriously looking for the truth, you should have source for the truth, and that's it. Don't start going rabbi shopping and so on. This is also why I tell people it's not healthy for you to get taught by different types of teachers. Why? Because different people have different customs, different rabbis have different strategies, different ways of teaching, and can lead to a lot of confusion. But even if you're going to ask the same question from multiple rabbis, you cannot ask them all at the same time. You have to ask one, get an answer, tell the second one that you asked that first one, tell him the answer that he told you, and what he thinks. That's how you ask multiple people the question. You don't ask multiple rabbis the same exact questions and wait for it to see who has a different opinion. That's not the way to do things. First of all, it's unethical. Second of all, it's just not the way to learn Torah. Because one person can tell you a question, the answer, based on their knowledge of you. One person can tell you the answer based on the knowledge of her circumstance. That's general and not more specific. So when a person understands how hard it is to arrive at the truth and how valuable the truth is, they're going to be a lot more careful with how they treat the law, how they treat the halacha, and not just throw it around and say, listen, to you, it's your opinion, me, it's my opinion, everybody can just live and do whatever they want. That's not the way we live. That's not the way the Torah is. That's unfortunately the way of the heretics. That's what the Satan wants people to do, where he wants people to simply say, no, nobody understands you, nobody understands your circumstance, and therefore you can POSKIM yourself. There's a situation that happened years ago in the time of the Noda Yehuda. Rabbi Yecheskel Landau, about a few hundred years ago, where a certain merchant had to go to, there was a event a couple of times a year where the different merchants from different cities would get together at this fair, if you will. And in that fair, they would either buy goods from each other or they would trade, bartering. You know, he needed, let's say, a bunch of metal, and he had wheat. The other guy needs wheat, and they would barter each other. But this wasn't every day. This was, once or twice a year. So one of these merchants that had a bunch of goods that he didn't need, but he needed something else, said, I have to go to this fair. I have to get this merchandise off of my, unload this merchandise, and I have to get something else. So he hired himself an eglon, someone that's going to drive him over there with the horse and carriage. And it's a week trip. So, take me over there. Here's the money for the week salary that you have, or really 2 week salary. And here's the money. So, the eglon wasn't exactly a genius, and wasn't exactly someone that cared too much to ask for permission for anything. He simply thought he knows best. Because he's been riding horses for a long time. He's been driving people for a long time. And he can make decisions for himself. Not necessarily thinking that if somebody's paying you to do something, you have to do it. And not just do whatever you feel like it. Like if your boss pays you to make posters and you decide to make cookies, you're stealing. 100%, you're a thief. If your boss pays you to listen to a video, and instead of listening to a video, you go outside and smoke cigarettes all day, you're a thief. Simple. So sometimes people think that they're good employees, but in reality, they're the worst people on planet Earth. Why? They're thieves. Simply, they're thieves. The boss is paying them for one thing. They simply don't do it. This, Rabotai, happens regularly. And unfortunately, sometimes even in the frum world. People think, no, listen, just that I arrived at work, that's already enough. I'll get to it. Yeah, but the boss told you to finish the job. Yeah, but he didn't tell me when, so I'll just take my time and I'll finish it on whenever. Yeah, but obviously the boss wants you to finish it as soon as possible, not whenever. He wants you to finish it as soon as possible. He's give you another task. He's not paying you X amount of money for you to sit there and twiddle your thumbs, perhaps watch a few videos on the internet, and then when you feel like working, you decide to work. That's not what he's paying you for. He's paying you to work. But no, some people decide to do things on their own, just like this eglon, this horse and carriage driver. So this eglon decided that, okay, he knows that there is a way to get to this place in 3 days, not in a week. So instead of wasting all this extra time going over there and sitting over there for 4 extra days, What are you going to do? Let us go sightseeing. And he starts riding the carriage with the horse, and everything is good. And the merchant falls asleep, he relaxes, he figures, he trusts this driver to take him to the right place. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days pass, and he starts looking around and says, wait a minute, you're going in the wrong direction. We're not supposed to be near the mountains, we're supposed to be over there. What are you talking about? We're far away. They go and says, don't worry about it. I know a shortcut of how to get there only in 3 days. Only in 3 days. So I figured, why waste all this extra time? Let's go sightseeing, see some nice mountains, the breeze, nice air, everything is good. Hey, I'm not paying you to go sightseeing. Let's go in a place. Okay, if you say so. Now we're not going to get there in time if you're wrong. Don't worry, we're going to get there. And he starts riding on his way to the shortcut, but something unexpected happened. What? Rain. A lot of it. Lots and lots of rain slows down their ability to travel, especially in those days. Instead of arriving there after 3 days, they arrive there after a week and a half. Everyone has already left the fair. The merchant has a bunch of goods that have gotten ruined. He can't do nothing about it. And this Eglon is such a chutzpan that he says, listen, I think you enjoyed yourself. I need a tip. I think I deserve a tip for such a ride. He says, what tip? Are you serious? A tip? A tip you want? I'm taking you to a bet din. I'm taking you to din Torah. I said, for what? You're going to sue me for what? He says, not only because you didn't take me where I told you to take in time, but on top of it, all my goods got ruined. So, they both go to a bet din of Rav Landau. And Rav Landau looks at the case and he says to the merchant, when it comes to the goods that got ruined, he didn't ruin them directly. It's grama, it's called grama. It's indirectly, it's the outcome, but he didn't do it directly. Therefore, the psak is, he doesn't owe you the money for the ruined goods. But the money that you paid him to take you to the fair, for sure he owes you a refund. For sure, that's the psak, that's the din. He owes you a refund. He has to give you the money back because you didn't do what you paid him for. So the Eglon, who was a bull, did not understand what 1, 2, 3 is in the Torah Bechlal. He says to Rav Landau, wait, you tell me I'm wrong? He says, yes, you have to pay him the din. You have to pay him the refund of the money. He said, yeah, but I took him. He said, yeah, but you didn't take him and you didn't meet the conditions. He says, where'd you get this? He says, that's the Psak Halacha. He goes, where'd you get this Psak Halacha? He says, this Psak Halacha was written in a book called Shulchan Aruch. That was written a couple of 100 years ago from that time. And he says, in this Shulchan Aruch, who wrote it? He says, a tzaddik chacham by name of Rabbi Yosef Karo. He says, and why did he write it? He says, because he saw that people were not remembering all of the details of what the Rambam and the Rosh, the tzaddikim from before them wrote. So he took things and he simplified it for the generation to understand. He says, so he wrote it, but it's not really him. He got it from somewhere else. Where did he get it from? Rambam. Why did Rambam write it? Where did he get it from? He says he got it from the Gemara. Where did they get it from? He gave him a whole shiur about how this is all written in the written Torah. This all was from Mount Sinai. So then the Eglon says, so you're telling me that everything that you're telling me now is written originally in the Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu. He says, exactly. Because now I understand why you paskined like this. So Rav Landau and the merchant are both looking at this ignoramus of yours. Okay, do tell. Well, what do you mean? He says, you see, you guys are saying that I owe him a refund. Why? Because there was a rain on the way there that delayed us. And you're saying that's written in the written Torah. Exactly. He says, that's the point. When was the Torah given? It was given in the month of Sivan. It was given in the month of Sivan, spring, there's no rain, beautiful, sunny sky. So of course, Moshe Rabbeinu, when he got the Torah, didn't consider my situation where we are now in a winter. There's rain everywhere. He didn't consider that because he got the Torah during the summer, during the spring, good weather. He didn't take my situation into account where it's going to be raining and so on. This, Rabotai, is the Satan himself. This is what the Satan will constantly tell people. That the Chachamim that are poskening your Halacha and the Bet Din, or the rabbi that's telling you the right way to do things, no. He doesn't understand my circumstance because he got the Torah in this month, and I got the situation in that month. And those two are not matched, and of course he doesn't think about all those situations. Why? Because you think he thinks like you. Or better yet, he doesn't think even like you. You think that you are even better than him. You even know more than him. And unfortunately, Rabotai, this is one of the things that's constantly happening. Constantly happening when people just simply ignore the Da'at Torah, they ignore the Chachamim, and they simply conclude things based on their own understanding. Their own understanding to the point where they lead lives that are the opposite of the truth. So much so that you even have certain major problems within our communities which never existed before. Never existed before. One of the examples, for example, I give you, is that throughout the last, since the time of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, women did not wear wigs. Sarah Imenu, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, all these tzadikot did not wear wigs. Everybody knows that. Tzipora, the wife of Moshe Rabbeinu, for sure did not wear a wig. Okay? Nobody wore a wig. The whole issues of wig is really is something that women wear if they had certain illnesses, but they only wore the wig. The Gemara in Masechet Shabbat, I believe it's page 62b, says that the women that put hair on their head, but it was under some type of hat or a second covering. It wasn't like women were walking around with this wigs of today, back 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, or even 1,000 years ago. In fact, if you look at some of the old videos that exist from, let's say, Warsaw, okay, where you see all these tzaddikim that got tortured by the Nazis, but first they were in ghettos and so on. Before the ghettos became the ghettos and they became such a nightmare, these people lived in the capital over there in Poland. They have, lives. They did their thing, and you see Judaism everywhere. You see certain people that are chachamim, look presentable, learning Torah even in the streets. And what do you also see? You see that all of the women that are covering their hair, they have mitpachat. Even though they're Ashkenazim, they have mitpachat. Now the confusion about wigs started a few hundred years ago, but generally speaking, that confusion was in the Ashkenazi world. It wasn't in the Sephardi world. That confusion about wigs was in the Ashkenazi world because it was an Ashkenazi posek that said that the Gemara that's referring to wearing hair on top of hair is really doesn't require the hat. And long story short, that confusion was in the Ashkenazi world. Why? Because in the Sephardi world, the poskim all concluded that wigs are forbidden. It wasn't our tradition, not in Yemen, not in Morocco, not in Egypt, not in Tripoli, not in Spain. There was no wigs over there. No one was going to wear a wig. In fact, most of the Ashkenazi world also did not wear wigs, but there were obviously some that did. Today, despite the fact that the issue of wigs, we're not even talking about the idol worship of wigs, which forbids it for all of mankind, needless to say for Jews. Today, though, the issue with wigs, as far as women wearing wigs, is no longer an issue within the Ashkenazi community, because you have certain Sephardic communities, certain Sephardic families that decided among themselves, to adopt the Ashkenazi rules, the Ashkenazi adhering, leniencies. She wants to wear a wig. Yeah, but you're not Ashkenazi. Yeah, but so what? The Ashkenazi rabbis are good. Yes, they're very good. They're big chachamim, they're tzaddikim, but they're not your rabbis. They're not your rabbis. You have to go by the Gdolei Ador of the Sfaradim. And what happens when people do not have anyone in the family that toils over the Torah, or they themselves simply disregard what toiling over Torah really truly means? They simply say, listen, Every rabbi is everybody's rabbi. And I could just choose whatever rabbi I want, just like I choose tomatoes, just like I choose potatoes, just like I choose anything else. And this rabbi has the leniency that I want, I'm going to go with him. That rabbi has the leniency that I want, I'm going to go with him. And there's nothing worse than that, Rabotai Karim. There's nothing worse than that when people, in essence, take the law and the deen into their own hands in order to adjust their own life to fit whatever they wanted, but they put a kosher stamp on it as if this is the Torah. But it's not. The Gemara in Masechet Rosh Hashanah, page 14a, says, people that look for the stringencies of Shammai and the stringencies of Hillel, stringencies. See, these are blind people. Only want stringencies all the time, you're a blind fool. There are certain times you need to be lenient. So if you're only looking for stringencies to be stringent about everything, any idiot can do that. The Chacham has to know when you're supposed to be stringent and when you're not allowed to be stringent. What about someone that's only looking for leniencies? He's looking for the leniencies of Shammai and he's looking for the leniencies of Hillel. Gemara says, Rashahu. That person is evil. Rasha. He's wicked. Wicked is a better word, not evil. Wicked person. Why wicked? This rabbi said it's allowed. Yeah, but he's not your rabbi. Yeah, but he's a big rabbi. Okay, he's a big rabbi, but he's not your big rabbi. Why? Can he be my big rabbi? He can be your big rabbi if you go with everything else that he says. You can't just decide today he's your rabbi and tomorrow somebody else is your rabbi. And that's unfortunately what's happening today in a Sephardic world. In a Sephardic world, you'll see certain Sephardic communities where they've adopted the wig. And what are they going to say? No, the rabbi that I had or I have, and the rabbi in the community over here, he says the wigs are okay. Yeah, but is he bigger than Rabbi Ovadia? Is he bigger than Rabbi Ovadia, the biggest rabbi in the Sephardic world for HaShem only knows how long? Perhaps since Rabbi Yosef Karo? He's bigger than him? Rabbi Ovadia says it's not allowed. You're saying it's allowed? But now, they say, no, we're going to use the Psak Halacha of the Ashkenazim. Fine. Then you tell them, listen, but now we found material that shows that there is, without a doubt, proof that all of the real hair wigs that are being worn today, all of them, were not the same type of wigs that the POSKIM that allow them to wear wigs allowed. Meaning the wigs of today do not look anything like the wigs that were permitted a generation or two generations ago. What do you say about that? And both sides, the Ashkenazi world and the Sephardi world, say, no, well, I don't know, because my rabbi's wife, she does it, and my rabbi says it's okay. Yeah, but are they bigger than Rabbi Yashiv? Are they bigger than the Chafetz Chaim? Are they bigger than Rav Moshe Feinstein? Are they bigger than the Lubavitcher Rebbe? Rabbi Lubavitcher Rebbe said that everything is allowed? No, he didn't say everything is allowed. But no, I don't know. My husband says it's okay. This one says it's okay. Okay, fine. Then you go three. We have found evidence. Not evidence that we read in some blog. Not evidence that we found on some video on the internet. Evidence with people that we employ, that live in India their whole life. Not one person, multiple people went and showed us evidence without shadow of a doubt, on video, on audio, on everything you can possibly imagine, that all of the wigs coming from India are coming from India. They're not coming from Brazil. They're not coming from UK. They're not coming from Russia. All of the wigs that are real hair virtually in the market are coming from a place of idolatry, which means they're forbidden not just for the Sephardi Jew, not just for the Ashkenazi Jew. They're even forbidden for the Goyim, because they're a form of worship to a false god, and the Goyim are not allowed to worship a false god. They're forbidden for everybody. And surely you will have some people say, yeah, but I have some other rabbi that he told me that the goyim that are really using the wigs and they're shaving it, they don't really mean that it's for an idol. They mean that it's for something else and the statue is not there and so on and so forth. And your head just wants to explode. And you tell them, listen, I didn't get this information just from Wall Street when I was already there and I already knew this information. I have people in India that used to believe in this nonsense that are telling me this stuff. They used to believe in this idol worship and they showed me this is it. They told me what they believe. We have priests from their idol worship place on interview telling me exactly what everybody means, that it's all for the sake of their false god.
This is the hair received from temple, this type. So each and every unit they are segregated and do it for tangle free.
Temple which is getting the hair free from the ladies, they spend the money for a lot of charity work. They give poor people feeding, they run universities, they run hospitals. Now imagine the temple there. If there is no market for this, they have to throw it.
Ces cheveux, ils viennent d'Inde. Et c'est la meilleure qualité de cheveux qu'on puisse trouver aujourd'hui en extension.
Étant donné que je considère que les Indiennes ont les plus beaux cheveux du monde, voilà, maintenant j'ai mon petit côté indien.
And even sometimes with people, you show them this, and even then they'll say to you, yeah, but it's so hard. Yeah, but I'm going to look different in my community. Yeah, but I don't know. So at least admit that you're doing something that's forbidden and that you have to work on it. Don't kosher the pig. Don't POSKIM halacha to yourself. Look at the law. See what the law is. Accept it for what it is, even if it's against your will. Accept it for what it is, and you'll receive a lot of blessings in your life. But when people manipulate the law to their own likings, they should not be surprised that their kids manipulate it even more to the point of disregarding it altogether. And that's unfortunately what's happening. Many times you have people that have manipulated the law to their likings in the previous generation, come surprised and in tears, telling you, oh, my son doesn't want to marry a Jewish girl anymore. My daughter is engaged to a non-Jewish person. My kid doesn't want to learn anymore. My daughter doesn't want this. What are you surprised? Why are you surprised? You already started manipulating the law in a small scale. He's manipulating it just a little bit bigger, one generation after another. This, Rabotai, is why it is something that is our whole survival depends on it. When a person knows what the POSKIM do in order to arrive at an halacha, they would simply do everything possible to overcome the Yetzirah, to overcome that Satan that tells them to do otherwise. I'll read you something that we wrote up recently. It's part of a write-up that we have about explaining what an halacha is. When someone was asked what is, for example, Rabbi Ephraim, he, Baruch Hashem, has written over 40 books or so, maybe more. And but his major work, I would say, is his responses, called Achtov LiYisrael. So far we've published 3 volumes, and Baruch Hashem, volume number 4 is being written, and almost completed actually. So now this Achtov L'Yisrael, it's a response that has the Psak Halacha of different intricate issues that among them including interesting topics, whether it be Wigs, idolatry, all types of certain parts of the country, all types of interesting things that he brought to the table. There were new insights that were things that required a lot of research. But what does it really mean to do Psak Halacha? So as part of the work, we wrote up something explaining it. Now, and this is what it says. In order to formulate a ruling, an issue of Psak Halacha, Rabbi Ephraim Kachlon conducts an extraordinary investigative study on both traditional and modern day resources in order to understand the issue from its roots and be able to connect it to the correct halacha, the Jewish law, that was written hundreds or even thousands of years ago, before the problem in hand even existed. And many times, the use of industry experts are utilized, such as medical, chemical, biological, archaeological, history, technology, and other sciences, and without any limitations to the length of how far the rabbi would go in order to uncover the details that would lead to the certain truth. So what's a hypothetical example of how a ruling would be analyzed is as follows. If one wanted to uncover the meaning and application of the laws pertaining to the famous verse in the book of Leviticus, chapter 19, verse 18, that says, "You shall love your fellow as yourself." These are some of the steps that would take place. Of course, the halacha is not pertaining to giving commentary and clarification on a verse, but this is for the average person to understand what does it mean to do an halacha on it. So you have a simple verse. It says, "You should love your fellow as you love yourself." Now, average person will say, well, it means you should love another person as much as you love yourself, right? No. That's maybe how you clarify it, but that's not how a posek is going to look at it. Well, how is a posek going to look at it? These are just a few of the minor steps. Not all the steps, but some of the minor steps that they would look at. Step number 1. Is the verse to be understood literally or not? Is Hashem really expecting you to love somebody as much as yourself? Is that even possible for an average human being? Number 2. What does love mean? It says to love your fellow as yourself. What does love mean? Which would require a thorough analysis of all rabbinic scholars and secular scholars to discuss love in the last 2,500 years. All work that discussed what does love mean in the last 2,500 years has to be reviewed. 3. Who qualifies or is disqualified as being your fellow? It says, love your fellow as yourself. Who is your fellow? Who is not your fellow? Which would require a thorough analysis of all rabbinic scholars and secular scholars to discuss this specific issue of fellow or not fellow, what friendship actually means in the last 2,500 years. Number 4. You should love your fellow as yourself, right? Is as yourself meant literally, or it's exaggerated? A thorough analysis of all rabbinic scholars that discussed this specific word in the last 2,500 years has to be reviewed. Every time yourself is mentioned in the Torah. Every time it says, do this as yourself, do this as yourself. Every time, was it this way or did it change? And which one is this most similar to? Now, to understand the true message of these few words, Rabbi Ephraim Kachlon would review all relevant works ever written about the topic that are available today, including digital, textual, handwritten letters, which can easily surpass over 1,000 different sources. Once the information is reviewed and the findings are concluded, the next part of the analysis is to compare the circumstances of today to the ones at the time the concluded findings were written. Are they similar enough to be applicable to the modern day issue at hand? Meaning, you can't just say, listen, this was done this way 500 years ago, therefore it's applicable today. No, you have to look at all of the circumstances that were applicable at the time. Were they living under the same type of rulership, government rulership? Same type of circumstances, poverty, wealth, and so on. Same type of religious figures, leadership, knowledge, and so on and so forth. You have to look at all of these things and see how it affects the actual ruling itself, if it affected it at all. Were the halachic rulings of the time also applicable to the modern day environment surrounding the issue today? What did the 1800-year-old Babylonian Talmud say about this verse? What did the rabbinic scholars who wrote commentary on the Talmud and the written Torah write about this verse? What did the medieval, meaning the Rishonim, like the Rambam and the Ramban, what did the medieval and even more recent rabbinic scholars who wrote commentary on the commentaries write about this verse? How were the disputes among the commentaries resolved? Meaning, you can have different chachamim say different things. Now, you can't just say different things blindly and say, oh yeah, they're all right. You can't just do that. Sometimes there's contradictions. How were the contradictions resolved? Is it really a contradiction, or there's a piece that needs to be to complete the puzzle? Sometimes you're going to have certain things that don't make any sense. I'll give you an example, something I learned recently. A lot of people that, hate the mystical world, one of their biggest problems is reincarnation. I believe, and it's very, very clear from the Chachamim, that in order to have complete understanding of different things that happened in the Torah, you have to not only believe in reincarnation, you have to know who reincarnated into who. For example, we've discussed that Cain killed Abel in Sefer Bereshit. Cain reincarnated into Esav, then into the Egyptian that was hurting the Jew, which Moshe Rabbeinu killed, and also into the blasphemer, which was the son that came out of that rape, that he raped, the Egyptian raped the Jewish woman Shulamit. That son that came out of there was the blasphemer, and the soul went from the Egyptian that died, who was the father, into the blasphemer, who also ended up getting killed. And Cain also reincarnated into Korach and Yitro. So in one generation, he was in essence 4 people. 3 at any given time. One soul into 3 different people. Korach, Yitro, and the blasphemer, or Korach, Yitro, and the Egyptian. This all started from Cain, who killed Abel. Now, Abel, who got murdered, reincarnated into Noach, who then reincarnated into Moshe Rabbeinu. There could be some others in between, I'm not sure, but nonetheless, those are the 2 main ones. Now, why Moshe Rabbeinu? Moshe Rabbeinu was Abel. So, he had to get the woman back from Cain, because why did Cain kill Abel? Because he was jealous because that Abel was born with 2 twin sisters, meaning 2 wives that he was able to marry, because in those days, to populate the world, that was the only way to do it. You had to marry your own sister. And so he married his 2 twin sisters, and Cain was born with a twin sister, a single twin sister. So he had only 1 wife. Abel had 2 wives, so Cain was jealous of Abel. And he killed him over the fact that he had an extra woman. So in order to rectify that sin, he had to give him back a woman, i.e. the reason why he had to reincarnate as Yitro, who gave him his daughter. Gave him Tzipporah to Moshe Rabbeinu. So in essence, Cain gave his daughter to Yitro. Now, the reason why he had to reincarnate as the Egyptian is because he committed murder. He killed, Cain killed Abel. So the rectification to that, the tikkun for that, is for Abel to kill him back, i.e. the reason why Moshe Rabbeinu killed the Egyptian. In essence, Abel killed Cain back, but it was permissible killing. So that's the tikkun for that. So now, the question I had is, what about the women? Now, what about the women? Why did the women, what happened to them? And this is what I learned. Moshe Rabbeinu had two significant women in his life, specifically, aside from his mother. Who? One was Batya Bat Paro, and the other one was his wife Tzipora, both of which saved his life. Batya Bat Paro saved his life by going to the river and taking the Jewish boy and saving him and raising him as her own. Tzipora, when they were traveling from Midian to Egypt, HaShem saw that Moshe Rabbeinu delayed the Brit Milah of his own son, and he sent him an angel that almost killed him. And Tzipora saved his life by doing the Brit Milah, and some say even getting somebody to do the Brit Milah of their son, and that saved Moshe Rabbeinu's life. Now, who are these women? Batya Bat Paro was the reincarnation of the original wife of one of the wives of Abel. One of the wives of Abel. And she came to the world to save her husband. She came to the world to save her husband. That's why Batya came back to the world, to reincarnate it, to save her husband from getting killed again. Tzipora was the reason why Abel got murdered. So she had to go back to her husband. She had to be reincarnated as Yitro's daughter to be gifted back to her husband, to Moshe Rabbeinu, to Abel. So here you see that this whole knowledge of reincarnation is a piece of the puzzle that makes a lot of sense to the story now that, wow, now I know this is information that is critical. This is information that completes the puzzle for me. That there is no other way to arrive at such contentness and such fulfillment of the stories of who's who and what's what without having this last piece of the puzzle. So of course there's many other pieces, but nonetheless we have some more. We understand that there is sometimes different opinions in the Torah, and sometimes it seems like they contradict each other. So how were those contradictions dealt with is one of the things that a posek like Rav Ephraim, or Rav Ephraim himself, will have to resolve. Much more things would have to be evaluated depending on the case at hand. And after painting a clear picture of the conclusions of the majority of the rabbinic scholars and all of the previous issued relevant psak halacha, it is then important to see if there was ever an identical issue in the past, and what was the ruling. If there was an identical issue, then do we have new information and proofs that agrees or disagrees with that existing ruling? Meaning, just because there's an identical case in the past doesn't mean that we rule just like them. We have to know if there is new information that perhaps the existing ruling did not have, that perhaps can change the ruling. If there are two conflicting rulings of the same situation, then he will then see if the more recent ruling addressed the issues and the contradictions of the ruling that preceded him, or if we have information that can address it from information and rulings from other rabbinic literature. Meaning, if there was two rulings of the same exact type of thing, but the more recent one, if he had contradicted the other one, did he address the old ruling? Or he didn't even know it existed? If he addressed it, then we have to see what he addressed it and if we agree with him, or if we disagree with him, if we have new information. Everything must be written and explained thoroughly in a clear and precise fashion using the appropriate language for rabbinic analysis of the Talmud, and published in a format of a responsa. After much time, effort, and sacrifice doing this analysis, Rav Ephraim then arrives at a psak halacha, a final ruling. Each ruling can take anywhere from several days of non-stop work to a full year to conclude, depending on the complexity and the number of resources needed. There are several exceptional projects that require much more investigation and longer-term studies, which Rav Ephraim has been working on for many years. One example is analysis in the field of intimacy between husband and wife, which has been ongoing for over 10 years and expected to be completed and published in the next couple of years, God willing. So here we see, Rabotai, a psak halacha, where you read in a responsa, is not just something that's like, oh, allowed, okay, allowed, check, check, check. No, it's not so simple. It's not so simple. It's not so simple. I give you a few examples of some of the things that are in Rabbi Ephraim's book, for any of you that haven't read it, and I'm assuming most of you have not. It's in Hebrew. It's in not even standard Hebrew. It's high-level Hebrew. And I'll give you some examples of some of the things that he discussed. Okay, some of the new insights. Now these were completely new, innovative rulings, findings, and thereby became the psak halacha that is now used by the people in the Jewish community of Israel was highly welcomed and so on. Now this, to have such a thing, is similar to how people use, for example, people use case law. When they have cases, they say, like, let's say there's famous cases that they use as their examples, like Miranda versus Arizona, 1966, or Brown versus the Board of Education, 1954, things like that. So now, what are some of the examples? In Siman Bet, in Achtov L'Yisrael, the first volume, he brought research in thorough medical investigation reports in order to evaluate the halachic ramifications pertaining to a person who has intestinal disease that causes him to become unable to be physically clean, which typically makes it prohibited to do certain holy services. And therefore, it was necessary to determine whether such a law permits, whether the law permits him to lay tefillin, because laying tefillin requires a person to be clean at all times. And how could he do it, and under what circumstances? Siman Zayin, the same book. Technological and psychoanalytical investigation to determine the halachic ramifications of having holy Torah teachings on a CD type of device, and whether this turns the CD into a holy object similar to a Torah book, and the implication this has pertaining to whether a person can delete or add or discard the CD, and whether it can be placed in certain places that are forbidden. For example, you're not allowed to put a Sefer Torah inside a bathroom. Are you allowed to put a Torah CD in a bathroom? So that's one of the things. Siman Chet, 8. Medical analysis of reports on the effects of smoking cigarettes on the human body, and whether it makes them halachically forbidden or permissible according to the Torah. This included many medical reviews, as well as a breakdown analysis of the intricate details writing of the sages over the last 2,000 years on the subject, not just the tobacco wars of the last 50 years. I'll skip a little bit. He has a Torah study program. Okay, let's go to the second book. In Siman Bet, in Achtov L'Yisrael, Volume 2, a halachic breakdown of what is considered poverty today, and how one is to be deemed poor can be expected to celebrate Shabbat, according to the halacha, with their limited resources. In Siman Tet, a halachic analysis of the Muslim religion today, whether it's considered idolatry or not, a breakdown of the writings of the Jewish sages over the last 2,000 years, concluded that despite the contradictions and changes, it's not deemed idolatry, but nonetheless problematic. Not pertaining to idolatry. Siman Yud, extensive study of biblical prohibition of tattoos, and the halachic determination of whether one is obligated to remove it or not. What are the exceptions, circumstances? Siman Yud Bet, 11. Speech analysis pertaining to life risks involving with talking too much, including recommendations of how to minimize speech while staying communicative. All types of interesting things. There's no specific area. In volume number 3, in Siman Gimel, a halachic discourse of a ruling that was requested from Rabbi Ephraim by the Jewish community of Boca Raton, Florida, in order to determine whether they are permitted to use a cantor who is intermarried with a non-Jew. The judgment brought proofs to the community that this person is deemed an avarian, according to the Torah, and thereby halachically disqualified to be a cantor. Siman Vav, halachic discourse of ruling requested by community about whether it's permissible or prohibited from using someone who is a paraplegic to read from the Torah on their behalf, since he cannot stand as required typically from one who reads the Torah. The halachic conclusion brought proofs and new chidushim determinations that it's completely permissible and possible without it being considered disrespectful to the Torah for a paraplegic to read from the Torah. Also analyzed the holiness of this and the status of modern day synagogues, the holiness of the Kohanim, halachic and Siman Zayin, halachic discourse of the ruling that the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, requested. The ruling of Rabbi Ephraim to judge for them regarding the halachic exceptions of the large ovens in the army bases and what law needs to be considered regarding the usage of the ovens for dairy and meat since they are so large. Or perhaps there was something that was requested from the Sephardic community in Panama, which to judge for their corporations and individuals regarding the use of oil that was used by non-Jewish helpers for cooking kosher food, and whether recycling oil can be done with them. This psak halacha had major community and financial implications for the Jews of Panama and other communities around the world. And so on and so on and so on. I mean, there's many, many other interesting things. The point is that a posek typically is going to review so many different things in such a fashion and microanalyze each and every single thing that anyone that knows what it means to be a posek, what it means to issue a psak halacha, simply gets insulted, even if it's not about themselves, when they see how the rabbis of today, the big rabbis of today, the poskim of today get insulted and disregarded as if they're commoners, as if they're like everybody else. Needless to say, when you see clowns mocking the sages of the previous generations, because there's so much goes into every single thing that is analyzed before the ink hits the paper, that only an idiot, fool, and an arrogant person would ever mock it or disregard it or ever think that they know more. This is why the way to know where you need to learn your Torah is very, very simple. If the teacher, whether it's via book or a lecture or otherwise, is constantly sticking to the words of the sages, that's where you go. If they're constantly sticking to their own opinion and their own thoughts, it's usually not the best place to be, and sometimes, unfortunately, many times, it's the worst place to be. A person needs to pray to HaKadosh Baruch Hu every single day to have the merit of having a kosher teacher, a kosher rabbi, that they could follow and they could listen and they could do what they say. Because if a person does not have enough effort exerted to earn themselves a kosher teacher, they could literally live their entire life in the wrong direction. Entire life, they're traveling full speed, wrong direction. Wrong direction. This, Rabotai, is one of the reasons why it's important to evaluate yourself at all times, to understand your own limitations, to understand what you can do, what you can't do, what you need to understand, what you need to simply accept, and really, really put yourself in a situation where you are just the perfect vessel to accept the Torah, to accept the truth, regardless of how it impacts you. Why? Because if you accept the Torah like a pure vessel, you accept the purity of the Torah like a pure vessel, you'll get rewarded in the end. You'll get rewarded in the end, even if it looks like it may be a little bit bitter at first. You'll see that in the end, it ends up becoming sweet. BeEzrat HaShem, this too will give us the clarity and the motivation to stick to the truth, no matter what it looks like at first. Because the truth in the Torah is not like other religions, that it's subjective and it changes from time to time. The truth of the Torah is only achieved through toil in Torah, through having emunah chachamim, having faith in our sages that this is the truth that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave them because they do things that the rest of us simply don't. We may be able to, but we simply don't. And sometimes we simply can't do it. The reality is, He gave it to them, we stick with them. And that's what we need to do as a people to help ourselves. BeEzrat HaShem, this gives us a little bit more clarity on things, and we'll talk more to each other later on this week about some other topics in our different series of the Geret Agra and also the Stump the Rabbi. Thank you for learning with me. May Hashem bless each and every single one of you, your families, to have all of the good that you want to do be fulfilled before you even expected it to be. Baruch Adonai L'olam, Amen ve'amen.
Seven years of lectures. Seven months of film editing. Countless hours of study by two rabbis. Information we received over 3,000 years ago. All for this moment. To whom had greed? The movie.
There's a small member in your body. It shouldn't take over your whole life. If you satiate it, you're never going to have enough.
The Soper clan, when it gets a hold of something, it does not let go.
Time for us to rectify what we have done.
Normal numbers should be somewhere around 20 million or higher.
You're never going to have control of it. If you start it, and only feed it when it's permissible according to the Torah.
Pornography is as addictive as crack cocaine.
You're always going to be happy, including this world and the next. Baruch Adonai L'olam, Amen.